I think we are back. And we can get started. As we are a small group, please just interrupt me if you want to ask something. We're also a peer group, so I'm surely not the only one here that has some experience. There's other colleagues that know as much as I do in the room. It's more like having a space where we can get started to refresh and learn again about this bigger picture of periodic reporting and the overall results framework. And that's what I mainly want to do, to take a step back and to understand the journey. What is this huge exercise that we will be working on in the coming year? And I put symbolically here the decades. It's not by accident. If we think back of 2023, many of you were there. We were celebrating not only that we had the presentation of the European periodic reporting in Botswana, but also the first launch of the International Day of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, celebrating 20 years of the UNESCO Convention. And one thing that was really striking is how much the convention was changing and how much it suddenly outreached as compared to the years before. It was something that became very visible around that period. Is the relation that was created, shaped to the broader society, broader outreach, broader stakeholder and partner involvement for the convention, and all the communication that was created for this 20 years of the convention and the International Day of the Intangible Cultural Heritage was really visualizing this effort, this endeavor of the convention at its birthday or at its celebration. And this comes from somewhere. And after the first decade of the convention, the Internal Oversight Service of UNESCO, the IOS, made an evaluation. This is regular. It happens with the UN instruments to regularly, often after a decade, for example, have a look into the instruments and to evaluate how things are working. Do they reach their objectives? And is there need for some change? We'll come back to that change approach that is very common in the UN system. So in 2013, actually, what was noted is that there was a lot of effort going to, as Lena already said, to this admin part that a convention creates, the listing systems, inventorying systems, reporting systems, and that actually, if you put this next to the objectives of the convention as they are mentioned in the convention text in the first articles, this was not well aligned. It was not necessarily that by listing and by inventorying that we were evolving and safeguarding living heritage with communities, groups and individuals much better than a decade before. Also, the overall results service, the International Oversight Service, the IOS, noted that there was not yet an overall results framework developed for the convention, which already was present for other instruments. So after that evaluation and the committee meetings, diving into this critical look at the convention, there has been like a few years of work with expert meetings, extra sessions and so on, and the results map has been developed for the convention and has been in 2016 adopted at the 11th committee session to build on further. So by 2017 there was a first set of indicators and assessment factors developed, which was then adopted at 12com. And in 2018, then by the 7th General Assembly, the high-level or overall results framework, as we know it now, has been adopted to work on. As always, within our UNESCO work, these processes take time. So let's say 5 years after the evaluation, we had a next step to improve our work with an overall results framework in the convention. Now, if you look at such an overall results framework, which is also the basis for periodic reporting, behind this is a theory of change approach, or a results-based management approach, which is usual in the UN system. You can put them, I put two visuals here, the one that is in the circle or the one that is going to progress, you could say. But the idea is that actually you want to use your policies you're making to go for transformation. So you want to make change and the direction that you want to head towards, and you do so on the basis of setting the impact you want to reach, the outcomes you want to reach, the outputs you have to reach to get towards that impact. So you have this kind of long-term vision. Where are we heading, and how can we go step by step in that direction by displaying the relationship between the objectives, the actions you need for that, and then how can you measure that you're actually making progress towards these outcomes in the right direction. In the course that Alessandra was also pointing to, all of this is really elaborately well explained for the ones that are interested in the strategic management approaches. I will touch on some parts of it today, but it's good to understand that actually this theory of change, which was also much debated at the time, is behind this. And that was the same time that also in 2015, the debates happened in the UNESCO Convention about both the ethical principles and about the chapter on sustainable development, chapter 6 in the convention, which was again no coincidence, because this is of course also a theory of change. How can we move towards more sustainable development in our world? And it was the time of shaping the sustainable development goals. The interesting thing of the timing of our IOS in 2013 and shaping the overall results framework is that this came all together. And if you look, we'll look into the overall results framework, which is the basis for our periodic reporting until now. If you look at it, you can really see how the chapter of the sustainable development is included in the overall results framework, but also how each of these indicators, targets, and so on, how these are relating to this bigger effort that we're making in the United Nations for the Agenda 2030 until now, is to make steps towards the Sustainable Development Agenda, which had for the first time also very much this circular approach, like it's not like separate goals. No, everything is intertwined, everything is interlinked. And even if culture was missing very much at that time, there was a lot that links to our work, and this was spelled out in the chapter on sustainable development already in the operational directives, which made it possible to have it well included also in the overall results framework, the indicators and the assessment factors. So this new chapter on sustainable development has also been in the past few years, and all of us are following the committee meetings and the different initiatives that have been taken since 2018 onwards. We've seen that there's a whole series of thematic initiatives, which again relate very much to these to all of these efforts within the framework. So we have been looking into the emergencies. There's the economic dimensions expert meeting, and then the guidance note that has been developed. There's the climate change that has been addressed. There's the urban context that recently adopted the guidance note, and we had the adoption of the text on the last meeting in New Delhi, and so on. Each of these, again, link very well to these efforts that are happening. So then in 2018, we had this framework for the convention, which very much follows this logic. How can we go from inputs, each of us, in a multi-stakeholder approach, states, parties with all the communities. There is, maybe Ocean, you can have a look to mute, thank you. And states parties that are monitoring in their periodic reports how this is evolving. Here you can see, we'll come back to the overall results framework from which you see the high level schedule here on top. On the bottom, and above you can see how it's being presented also in the capacity building materials of the convention in the past few years, with the different sustainable development goals that are very present, and that each of them link to many of the indicators that are there. The long-term impact of the convention, which all of us should keep in mind at all times, is that we want to go to intangible cultural heritage being safeguarded by communities, groups, and individuals who exercise active and ongoing stewardship over it, thereby contributing to sustainable development for human well-being, dignity, and creativity in peaceful and inclusive society. So this is like the upper layer of this overall results framework, the very long-term impacts that we are all working towards. And I will go back to the slide. So it's the line on top that you can see there. And the line below, you see long-term outcomes. There is one on continued practice and transmission of intangible heritage is being ensured. There's one on the diversity of living heritage being respected. There's one long-term outcome on recognition and awareness of the importance of living heritage and its safeguarding ensured. And there's one on engagement and international cooperation for safeguarding being enhanced among stakeholders at all levels. These 4 long-term outcomes is what we hope for, that we really realize all together. That's what we're working for, and we hope that it has this outcome, the concrete initiatives we take, the outputs that we create, all of us with our policies, with our activities, and so on. We hope that they have the outcome in the long term, and these 4 long-term outcomes were the ones that were decided in the 3-year process that I just explained as important for our convention to work towards. As you can see, this is not about listing very much specifically. It's really about how can these practices being continued, how can the diversity remain present, how can there be a better recognition and awareness of the value and importance of living heritage in our world, and how can we have a good international collaboration around these themes. So this is really a shift in how periodic reports before were very much on, let's say, technical administrative details, towards now this long-term vision where we're trying to work on, and what is actually also what will guide the way we are reporting on each of our activities, which has a huge impact and a shift in the way we are looking at our work. If you see these long-term outcomes, you can translate them to the midterm steps that you need to get to these long-term outcomes. And there have been decided on 2 sentences. Effective relationships are being built among a diversity of communities, groups, and individuals and other stakeholders for safeguarding living heritage. So it's very much on the networks, the relationship that should flourish and function well, and dynamic development and implementation of safeguarding measures or plans for specific elements of intangible cultural heritage and led by diversity of community groups and individuals. So here you see the importance of the listing system coming up, being linked to empowering actually the community groups and individuals that are behind these elements and these listed elements, and also linking it to this diversity very much. So the representative list and linking this to a diversity of cultural expressions worldwide that can be included and involved. Again, going a step closer to where we are now, the short term. How can we get to this midterm and this long term? There again, there are two outcomes being set: improved capacities to support the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in general, and improved capacities to implement safeguarding measures or plans for specific elements of intangible cultural heritage. You see the second one, again, links very much to the lists, and the lists are here being mobilized as instruments that can help you to improve safeguarding capacities of the many actors involved, and to link actually the listing system very much to safeguarding and to empowered safeguarding. And the other one, to have a general improvement of capacities, so more widely in the heritage sector, for example, and in other sectors in society, and of course as well in the living heritage professional development that is happening in relation to this convention. So in a step-by-step, you come from this short-term outcomes, in which the listing certainly and the capacity building certainly is an important instrument or vehicle. You go to these longer term outcomes that are more high level, more idealistic, you could also say, like this dream that we all are working for, and how it can help us to get there. Under this, and this will come back very much also in the periodic reporting, the overall results framework works with 8 thematic areas. This makes it much more digestible. All that we have seen until now is not very digestible to start reflecting on, or to start working on, or to make activities on, to work towards these goals as they are set. Through these thematic areas, you can start to understand, okay, so on the level of the first thematic area, institutional and human capacities, this is what we could do, what is expected, what is we are trying to work towards. And in this way, the whole debate that was conducted between 2016 and 18 was about what are now these thematic areas that we should focus on, how should we define them or align them. And of course, there's a lot of overlaps. And again, this is also something that will come back. It's one of the strengths, I think. A lot of things are intertwined and are connected. But at the same time, you have a focus in each of these thematic areas, what you're really working on. So just as an overview, there's one area on institutional and human capacities. We'll come back to each of them to explain them. There's one on transmission and education. I remember the whole debate. It was first education and transmission. It was changed. Transmission is really the very first. This is what is core in living heritage, is the practice that is being transmitted. But also in the convention's articles, education is very core, and it's of course one of the strengths of UNESCO to be able to combine this educational view of UNESCO with the transmission dimension. So this is the whole thematic area, the second one. Then the third one is on inventorying, the listing approach towards safeguarding, and also how research and documentation contribute to these areas. Then there's a whole chapter or thematic area on policy making, legal and administrative measures that are being developed. And the fifth one is on the role of intangible cultural heritage and its safeguarding in society. So here you see very much society coming in, which was new at the time. I think now we are all well acquainted with this approach, but at that time it was really new. For us, the whole awareness raising, media, communication layer is the sixth one. Then there's the engagement of communities, groups, and individuals, as well as other stakeholders. Here you see the stakeholder approach coming in very much. And the last one is, of course, we are in a UN instrument, is about the international engagement and how does our collaboration internationally contribute to all of these other areas as well. So these are the 8 thematic areas. And these will be guiding the whole framework, the whole periodic reporting. They will come back, and in the ideal approach, they also lead all of our work as it contributes to reaching these longer term outcomes and impacts we're heading to. Now, in the previous training, and Anita Vaivade is not here, but in the European training for the previous cycle of periodic reporting, one of the facilitators, an expert in the convention that is well known, Anita Vaivade, made this exercise to actually show, if you go to this overall results framework, which we now just saw in a table, and you start to analyze where all the connections are between each of these 8 areas, there are actually a lot of interconnection. It's visualized here, and UNESCO has put this also on the website, because I think it mirrors as well the way we think about sustainable development today, as also showing how much actually this working to these long-term outcomes, you cannot divide, for example, communication from inventorying, you cannot divide transmission from stakeholder involvement, you cannot divide policies from international collaboration. So there's many intersections or connections between each of these thematic areas. And this is one of the challenges for us when we will start reporting, because it can really feel like you're starting to have repetitions. And I imagine that this is one of the exercises that the team at the Living Heritage entity and with the expert has been doing. Many of the questions that were there in the previous cycle felt like addressing similar or related issues, whereas there was a nuance or there was a slight difference in the way it was worded. And I know all the more in these first decades of the convention, it's still quite soon in the life of the convention, that often we're just, it has been said already, we're just one focal point. Often we don't have teams or a lot of people working on this. So what you do when you make policy instruments, often you try to integrate a lot of the goals in one activity or in one instrument or in one call that you're developing, which even makes the interrelationship between many of these goals stronger, as you will think of the same instrument in question 1 and in question 64 by the time you're there. But then you feel like, but didn't I already mention this? Yes, maybe you did, but it will have been from another angle. So for us, it can feel repetitious, and still it can be valuable to understand all these different layers and dimensions of the work we are doing. And it is well shown by this graphic that indeed there are many interrelations. Depending if you enter it from one angle or the other, you will have another gaze on it. Important is that this overall results framework, of course, we will be using it now to measure impacts on the progress of the convention towards this overall results framework. But actually, it can be used in many ways. You can use it for yourself in measuring project impact. You can use it to inform your project design, to have implementation and monitoring strategies, and then, of course, also to have your reporting. This is something that's also in the civil society area. The NGO Forum has been working on. There's a working group on the overall results framework, for example, that really has been looking into, as NGOs, how can we also use this overall results framework to make strategic planning, to develop activities, and to contribute within our states party or within a larger area towards contributing to these bigger goals that we are all aiming for. So it's not just an admin. It's more like a guide along the road that we're going. Now I go back to where we were. So we had 2013 with the evaluation after the first decade, then 2023 when we had the first report and we worked with the Sustainable Development Goals. But all of you probably also know that one of the things that is walking between the lines over the last 2-3 years when we're talking about periodic reporting is that there is the whole endeavor now for Mondia Cult. There was the Interministerial Conference in 2022 in Mexico, where only a few of us, I think Lena was there, and which emerged like a new agenda or a revitalized agenda to have culture better included in the future agenda for sustainable development. And UNESCO has really stepped up and taken a lead there to mobilize not only our convention, but the cultural sectors in the wide sense to strive towards having culture better included in the future sustainable development goals, or whatever they will be named. And as you can see, this is again a theory of change agenda that is being put. And moving to this theory of change, we will need to link it to the existing mechanism that we have, like this overall results framework, like our periodic reporting systems. And even if for us as a convention, the whole overall results framework and the periodic reporting feels, or the change in periodic reporting system feels quite new. We only have done it once. We will have had just this first cycle. So this immediately comes in as the next step to be taken, and it's quite overwhelming again, as the periodic reporting and the whole overall results framework have been overwhelming anyhow for many of it. It's a complex structure, and that this was also one of the evaluations. I think that it's quite wide, it's complex, it's quite technical, whereas actually it wants to be used in a very practical way by all of us, by all stakeholders. So let's say that the way it is presented didn't yet really align with the ambitions it puts to be a very useful instrument in working all together towards these goals. So, but now we get this extra layer, which is not very clear yet, which is not decided yet, and still it needs to mobilize all of us to work again to this new extra layer of a culture goal in the sustainable development agenda. One of the things that we have seen that already happens in that sense, and in the previous meetings of our convention, it has been discussed as well, is that a first report has been made on cultural policies by UNESCO, trying to bring already together the data that are available through all of these existing reporting and data mechanisms in the convention, in the conventions and in other instruments. And this was presented in the second, or the 2025 Interministerial Conference of Mondia Cult last September and beginning of October in Barcelona, where this first UNESCO Global Report on Cultural Policies was presented. And where actually also this idea of we should work towards the missing SDG, the culture goal, was really being put on the agenda with many of us. Also, the way this culture goal could look like started to be presented there. There's quite some information and documentation online. We can share them as well for the ones that want to read more about it. And also within the networks of the living heritage experts and of course the secretariat and so on, the exercise has been done. How does ICH fit into this larger spectrum of culture? How does it relate to the 72 Convention on World Heritage? How does it relate to the 2005 Convention? But also how does it relate to actually the topics that we are working on, or also the indicators, the outputs and so on that we are working on with living heritage. So this new agenda on a culture goal in the future, 2045, or whatever agenda it will be, on sustainable development, is coming in the exercise that we are doing now on the overall results framework and on periodic reporting, because it's like the bigger picture that we are all in together in the UNESCO culture field in the coming years. While it's still in progress, it's not decided fully. It's not all in texts yet. It's a work in progress, but that cannot move forward without also having the data and the monitoring already starting to move into that direction. If we now go back to periodic reporting under the 2003 convention, we know it's one of the obligations, one of the few that states parties have to the convention to submit reports according to the form and periodicity set by the committee. The last cycle that we had was like a 6-year cycle. For the first time, it was done in a regional approach. So the European, both Group 1 and Group 2 were being put together. Whatever date we had before as a state party to make our report, it changed. And we got like the year 2021 to work on our periodic report and to be submitted. I think it was early January 2022 in the end. I'm not sure anymore. So there was a little delay that was admitted. But in that 1 year, we all worked together to our own state parties' reports to be realized. And this would happen every year in another region. And then we would have in 2025 an evaluation year, a reflection year of our experience. How do we see what we have done? What should be changed? What can be kept? So this is all very recent. This happened in 2025, and now we are heading to this next cycle. And these were all the debates that were there in the General Assembly. While also, as just explained, there is also this bigger picture of the Mondia cult and the culture goal that is in the air now. The purposes of periodic reporting are to monitor this effective operationalization of the convention at our national levels and to take stock regularly of the progress we are achieving and the challenges we are encountering in implementing the convention. And we should keep in mind even, or maybe most, if we get very tired of this reporting exercise, which is also a very detailed and technical exercise in itself, that it's not an end in itself, but it's part of this bigger process of tracking our activities and how we are working to these long-term goals as in the overall results framework. I will not read this loud because this is what the iOS report mentioned on how it was before, which was very few responding to all of these. It was much about activities. There was not a lot of focus. So it was more like an activities report, you could say. So not impact-oriented, not change-oriented, not looking to this bigger picture, but more like really looking inside, you could say, instead of outwards of what we were doing. And this means really a change with the reports that we have made in the last cycle in 2021. This I have already showed, the overall results framework that is heading. Now our work, what I put here, and of course today is not the context to go into this deeply, but for me it was very helpful, and we made this with the network of facilitators in Europe last time, just to have like the clear overview and with these highlights of what should we be focusing on of the 26 indicators and the thematic areas. So here I have repeated the 8 thematic areas. They are on top each time, each with their indicators, and then what is actually the focus of this indicator highlighted, and how can you link it to the focus that you can keep in mind when you're working on the questions that relate to that. It keeps you, or it helps you keeping focus, and also to differentiate between the answers in, for example, indicator 1 and the questions that relate to that, and then other ones in, for example, indicator 13 or something like that. So I've put them here. And as you can see, indicator 1 is mainly about these competent bodies and these institutional capacities. Indicator 2 is about the human capacities. on post-secondary training, how are people being trained. In this indicator 3 is mainly about the extent to which this training is operated by or addressed to the communities, groups, and individuals. So who are the audiences for such trainings? And together they form thematic area 1, which is looking into how far are we with our institutional and human capacities in our countries. Thematic area 2 is about transmission and education. It's again a thematic area with 3 indicators. The first one is looking into formal and non-formal education, and looking at how the impact of ICH education in general is working towards the respect for the practice of and transmission of ICH. So actually, how does it contribute to our safeguarding of ICH? The indicator 5 focuses on primary and secondary education and has a set of questions there. And indicator 6 looks into the post-secondary education and what is happening there, how are things evolving there. It was really key with the coming of the overall results framework that also this whole extra effort on education has come in our convention, which now is quite common. We have had the capacity building and so on there. And so a lot has happened, and the overall results framework shaped it very much in that direction, that it is an important area now in all of our work. Then we have this third thematic area, which is on inventorying and research. The first one, just like the previous one, indicator 4, was focusing on how training and education contributes to safeguarding. Here, the first one is looking at how inventorying contributes to safeguarding of living heritage. So what is the focus of our inventories, and are they really contributing to safeguarding in the spirit of the convention? That's indicator 7. Indicator 8 then looks into the process of inventorying. So not the inventories as in themselves, but actually are these inclusive inventorying process that we are developing? Do they respect the diversity of living heritage? Remember, when we had the overall results framework in their different layers, that diversity is very strongly linked to safeguarding living heritage with community. So you see that coming back here. How is the diversity of ICH and its practitioners being reflected in our inventorying processes? And with our network here, and with Mirella and Helmut, we've done the exercise lately to see what is happening on that level, for example, in the European countries lately. Indicator 9 looks into research and documentation and how these contribute to safeguarding. And then 10 looks into how actually research and documentation are being shared, utilized, made accessible in the wider area. Then thematic area 4 looks, I will maybe not run over each of them individually, it will take too long, but how our policies or legal and administrative measures in the field of culture, in the field of education, in other fields are being developed, are helping safeguarding, and are being implemented. It's important to make the distinction there. So as you can see from the highlights also, it's not only about which policies and instruments do we have, but also how are they being implemented. And then the 14th again links to how does this relate to the spirit of the convention, respecting customary rights, practices and expressions, the whole ethical frame that is very important in our convention. Then the thematic area 5, which is on the role of living heritage and its safeguarding society. So it's trying to assess how the position of ICH is evolving in the wider society. And on the other hand, with indicator 16, it's trying to see how inclusive plans and programs fostering respect, self-respect and mutual respect, again, the ethical approach there, is being a part of the safeguarding approaches that are being developed. The sixth area measures or assesses awareness raising. Is there community participation? What are media doing? What is public information, broadcasting, and so on doing? And again, the last one looks at and what does this mean on the side of the ethical principles that are so important for our convention. The seventh one is looking into the engagement of the communities and other stakeholders. How is engagement for safeguarding ICH growing in a wider stakeholder approach? And how actually does civil society contribute in the monitoring of ICH safeguarding, which is of course also a very important part of the periodic reporting effort itself to see how all kinds of actors that are relating to the work on the convention are also engaged and involved in this whole process, not only of reporting, but also of the work itself on the convention. And then the last chapter on international engagement looks, and these, I think 2 questions of these are automatically filled, so we don't have to do it within our states parties. They relate, for example, to accredited NGOs and to the existing, like the funds that is there, the listed elements and so on. But it also looks into the way we are working together, how are we sharing information. So all this kind of information and documentation comes up in this last area. These 8 thematic areas, you see them here on top again, relate to each time a few indicators. We've run briefly through them now, and each of these indicators is then again assessed via what's called assessment factors. So a set of assessment factors try to get a grip of these indicators per thematic area. And this is very much part of this results-based management, the theory of change approach, which is a kind of strategic monitoring and following up and evaluation system. And you can only do it if you have quantitative data and qualitative data. We're trying with our convention to have some more quantitative data, and this whole exercise on periodic reporting is an exercise in trying to shape or create or generate such data. But it's always a combination of qualitative data. As Luba already said, a lot of this is self-assessment, it's qualitative, it cannot really be compared, but it's important to try to create those data in this bigger picture of the UN Sustainable Development progress and so on. So this is an endeavor through this whole series, and it's a lot, it's 86 in total that we had in the past periodic reporting, to have a series of assessment factors which then were translated almost one-to-one in a question set, which made it possible to let's say, measure and monitor each dimension of each of these indicators that I have just briefly run through. I'm zooming out again. I won't take too long anymore as time is finishing. We try to look at it as a kind of landscape of periodic reporting. So on top, you have this overall results framework, which helps us to assess where we are with the implementation of the convention. In this exercise of periodic reporting, we try to get an overview of all existing initiatives by ourselves as focal points and the public institution, but also by communities and other stakeholders. And these all go together. And through doing this exercise, on the one hand, actually, you can shape for yourself an opportunity to make a roadmap, learning from what you do in the periodic reporting, where you are at. If you do this whole exercise, you can try to use it to make a roadmap for your future programs and policy development in Flanders. And I'm not sure whether the colleagues are still here, but it was really an exercise that we've done by looking at, okay, what's the baseline, what are the targets that we want to put for ourselves, and how will we work towards that, which kind of new initiatives will we put on our roadmap for the coming year. And the Flemish government made this kind of 10 action plans with new goals set for the next decade to work on. And this is really helpful, and it's aligned with the overall results framework as well. And it can also help you to bring your stakeholders in your context together to work around these future initiatives. This is what is shown here. Any of these relates to all kinds of actors, and one of the challenging things in the reporting exercise is to get an idea of how can I have a feasible strategy or way of talking with all those stakeholders and get the right information that then will feed into all of these assessment factors. And I think it will be part of the exercise when we get the question list soon to see, okay, which things are related, how can we maybe make some tools and question sets for you that you can easily translate in your own languages in an accessible way, and that if you go for thematic area 1, indicator 12 or something to it will not be indicator 12, I meant assessment factor 9, for example, to NGOs, how can you avoid that 1 month later you need to go back for the 4th area and question 54, but already to try to integrate these and do it in a feasible way, and that you can really work in a good overview with all of these questions and all of these actors. So we'll try to help you with that, and sure that also the Category 2 Center will be doing this exercise as it will be a global reporting effort now. So this is about these interrelations that I was just explaining. These are just repetitions to have some visualizations for all of you, how these things hang together and how this fits into this bigger frame of the overall results framework. So all these inputs from the questions and the assessment factors that we will be responding, and it were 86 last time, it can be different now, to the indicators feed into this bigger overall results framework. I have included a few examples just for your reference. There's no time to dive into it now, but it makes it clearer how such an assessment factor, what can it look like, and then how it looks like in the questions later on. So these performance indicators, for each of these assessment factors, and this is what was debated there, from there comes the baseline and also the target where you want to work on. The whole idea is that measuring towards this overall results framework through our periodic reporting, we can see where we are and so also see how we can make progress. And that's happening through these quantitative and these qualitative indicators. And after responding our questions, I think it's on one of the next slides. Yeah, one of the things that came out in the previous cycle is this baseline, which happened automatically. So you said yes or a little and one of your question, and then automatically you got like this kind of overview. Okay, you have partially or largely succeeded for this part of the reporting, and then you could put for yourself how you want to proceed in the next years. Do you want to make a big progress or not? So the upper one was there automatically, and the one down there was actually for the country to decide this is something where we want to move forward, or we will have the status quo, or maybe it's not something where we'll be putting efforts on. In the theory of changes is important, of course. It's there where you decide where you really want to put efforts and make a change in the coming period. Also, just as a reference, because it might really look different, I put an overview of the online form as it was. It has already been, so this was the main page. It has already been said there was a section A, which was like general information for each country, a section B, which was very much on what I have just explained. It was linked to the overall results framework. And this was like the major part or bulk of the work, although also section C takes a lot of efforts for many, depending on how many listed elements you have and how you make the process. And this is the one that already can get started and will not change a lot. It's about the status of the elements and the heritage and the listing mechanism, so not the register. as Hildegun has explained. Not everything is there, but for sure, like the questions that were asked towards the UNESCO listed elements, these will be very much the same, and you can already work on that. And then there's just like the, let's call it the signature part that was there in the last cycle. So that's it. I almost made it in half an hour. As promised, I will close my window. And I hope it gave you more like this bigger picture of what we are working on. If you really want to dive into the overall results framework, we need a few hours. This was not possible in half an hour today. But I think this is important to understand what is actually what actually are we trying to do, and why will we be doing so much efforts in the coming year. If there's any questions, I will be happy to.
Thank you, Jorijn. This was really a good reminder for me. I have been through this exercise once before, or twice actually, but this was really, really good reminder. And also, I think it shows how we can use the reporting system as a tool for implementation of the convention more broadly, and especially with the overall result frameworks. So very good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there still questions? Thank you, Hildegun. No questions?
Next time, maybe.
Yes. Okay. So, but as I already said, you can easily reach us through the ENFP address, and we'll come back to all of your questions then.
And you will also make a PDF of this presentation,
yes,
so we can
yes,
use.
For sure.
Very useful.
And
very
maybe
useful.
we can have just a part on the presentation also on our drive or on the website or something like that.
Good.
Okay, see you later then, colleagues. Have a great summer.
You.
Oh,
It's Esmeralda having a question.
There is a question. Okay, Esmeralda.
It's our colleague from Albania.
No, hi, Joanna. I'm actually on field work. I followed the presentation. I don't know. I actually wanted to applaud the presentation, but since I am traveling, it gave the impression that I had raised a hand. But thanks a lot for all the clarifications. Okay. And for any other question, I would actually look carefully on the PDF. And for any other clarification, I would of course be in touch. Thanks a lot. This was really helpful.
Esmeralda, we keep in touch. Bye bye.
Thank you.
bye.